Hi folks, Toad here with Visordown.com and welcome to the UK launch of the KTM 1290 Super Adventure S. So we have just come in from the road ride of this bike, so I wanted to take a little bit of time to tell you about it. What I'm not going to do in this video is go through all of the specs and everything that's new with the new model. We've already done videos about that earlier on in the year, so if you want to find out the real key points and the features and the specs of it, go and head over to the YouTube channel and Visordown.com. There's articles up there already. What I am going to do is I'm going to tell you about the changes that I think have improved this bike the most over the previous generation. So everything that KTM have done and how that affects it and how it makes it better or worse than the previous generation 1290 Super Adventure. So without further ado, I think we should start off by talking about the engine really. So there have been big updates for this year, not just for Euro 5, but KTM put a lot of work into the new engine. They've made the casings thinner, they've made the internals lighter where they needed to be, and they've shaved a lot of weight out of the unit. It still produces about the same power as before, so 160 PS and around about 157 bhp, and you've got 101 pound-foot of torque on offer. So it's still supremely torquey and very powerful. It's all the engine that you'd really need on the road and almost too much for off-road riding if you were doing some sort of tight and nadgery stuff. The things that have improved with the engine over the previous 1290, it feels a lot more refined. I always remember there was a colleague that I used to work with and I started up the previous generation 1290 Super Adventure, and he turned to me and he jokingly said, "Oh, I didn't realise that KTM made diesel motorcycles." And it was a bit of a clattery and a bit of a noisy and a bit of a bangy old unit. That's all gone, and like some of the other KTMs that we've ridden recently, the 790 Adventure and the 390 Adventure as well, KTM have engineered in a bit of refinement into their engines. They don't seem to clatter and bang as much, and they don't seem to sort of jump around in the frame at low revs when you're riding through town. They're a lot smoother, they fuel a lot better, and the throttle's really nice and crisp. So there've been big improvements. It's not just about saving weight and getting around Euro 5 regulations. I know they don't make much power than before, but really on the road, you don't actually want much more power than this thing's got. Any more in an adventure bike, I think, is basically just willy waving. So another thing that has changed for this model is the electronics package on it. It's always been chock full of electronics, like all modern adventure bikes. They are full of electronics, and this is no different. You've got the slide control, you've got the traction control, you've got the off-road riding pro modes. I do still find them quite difficult to navigate. The previous 1290 Super Adventure, I found the control system on that bike a little bit easier than this one. This system is basically it's inherited from the Super Duke. So you've got the kind of the toggle button on the left-hand handlebar, and I still find it a little bit tricky to get my head around. I need to spend more time on the bike to really learn it. I'll also say that I don't like the way that KTM make you turn off the traction control. It's a bit like patting your head and rubbing your stomach. You have to sort of shut the throttle, press the button, and then while you're holding the throttle shut, remove your thumb off the button. Just give us a button where you can press it, hold it down for 2 seconds, and it turns the traction control off. That's what I really want. One thing about this bike, and this is kind of the big selling pitch from KTM, is of course the adaptive cruise control. So it's got the radar sensors in the front of the bike which sense the vehicle and adjust your speed accordingly. I always thought that adaptive cruise control on a motorcycle was a little bit like car companies fitting electrically operated power seats in a car. It's for lazy people, and it weighs, it adds weight and it adds expense, and nobody actually really needs it. And I thought the same about adaptive cruise control, until I rode it today, and it's really good, and it's a very clever system. So you set your distance to the car in front by sort of 4 or 5 parameters, and the bike will just accelerate and decelerate to keep you that set distance in behind the vehicle in front, be it a motorcycle or a car. It'll also adjust your speed accordingly if somebody pulls out in front of you, and if you are say on the inside lane or the left-hand lane of a motorway and you flick on the indicator, the bike will just roll in an extra 500 or 1000 RPM and just get you a bit more speed so that you can just make the overtake, and then it will drop back down when you pull in. And I didn't think I was going to like it as much as I did, and I tried my best to catch the thing out. So I would sort of accelerate up and let the cruise control take me up alongside a road traffic, then pull in at the last minute. And it is pretty much unflappable. It will just slow the bike down. So I didn't want to like adaptive cruise control, and I definitely didn't think I would, but actually I would use this system if I was riding one of these as a long termer. Another big electronics update for this year is the electronically adjusted WP suspension. On the previous 1290, you could always feel it working away. You could feel it adjusting the pitch of the bike as you were braking hard into corners and so on. And I used to think, oh, that's cool, you can feel the electronic suspension doing stuff, but actually it wasn't cool. I don't think you should actually feel it working away. I think it should just be there in the background. That's what this model is. This suspension now, you can't perceive it working, it just does its own thing, and it sort of makes you a better rider. The sporty riding mode is extremely sporty, super naked sporty almost, with loads and loads of braking support, and it's sort of everything that you'd need for fast riding. And I did stick it in the comfort mode as well earlier, and it was a little bit like riding around on a two-wheeled waterbed. It was really, really soft, really wallowy, and it seemed like all of the damping control had been sort of dragged out of the suspension. You can go in there, you can adjust that though, and if you were riding to it with somebody on the back and a shitload of luggage, you are probably going to want the comfort mode turned on for that as well. What else has changed? The frame is different, it's revised. The fuel tank, you've got a double bubble fuel tank. I referred to the 790 Adventurers having testicular fortitude, or elephantitis of the balls hanging on either side of it. It's the same setup on this, and what it does is it drops all of the weight of the bike really, really down low, and it just makes it really responsive when you're turning into corners and also when you're riding off-road. It's a really, really clever update. So, what do we like about the 1290 Super Adventure S? The engine's still a peach. It's an absolute beast of a unit, and it's got everything that you need and more for on and off-road riding. I love the electronic suspension and the way that they've sorted it out for this year and the way that they've tuned it. I think it's really, really trick, and it's worth the cash effectively just for that system alone. I also like, and I didn't want to say it, the adaptive cruise control, because I think stuff like that generally is a gimmick, but that is one that I would actually use. What don't we like about the 1290 Super Adventure? The seat is about paving slab hard. My arse got seriously numb after a couple of hours in the saddle, although I was riding a Hayabusa yesterday, so it might be a hangover from that. So if I was going to buy one, I'd be getting the comfort seat or one of the 9 other seats that you can buy for the Super Adventure, as they have got your backside covered with whatever it likes. The other thing that I don't like about the Super Adventure is the kind of the clicky sort of, I mean, this looks like a hi-fi stereo system from about 1994. It's a little bit overcomplicated. I don't think it needs to be that complicated, and the way that you turn off the traction control is probably the most frustrating thing that I've ever seen on a motorcycle in my life. The £14,999 KTM 1290 Super Adventure is going to be in dealers very, very soon. Admittedly, that is the sort of the bike as it comes from the factory. If you want all the extra toys, all the electronics, the quick shifter, the off-road pro and so on and so forth, you'll have to pay a little bit more to go and get those all sort of turned on by your local KTM dealer. The thing is though, when you look at what this bike can do and you look at the Swiss Army knife properties that it's got, it can do the super naked thing. You can go touring on it, you can go commuting on it, you can go play with sports bikes on it, you can go off-road on it. You look at all those things that it can do, it is basically 5 bikes in one for that money. And then you look at some of the other bikes in the adventure category, things like the Multistrada V4, which is, going to be over £20,000 for an equivalent spec to this. It's actually pretty good value. If you like what you see, or you're a fan of the old 1290 Super Adventure, get yourself down to a KTM dealership fairly soon and get yourself a test ride, because it's again, it is a very, very formidable motorcycle. It's just better than it ever was. Cheers, folks.